Right, we are recording. Adam, how you doing?
Pretty good, mate. Not too bad. I can't complain. Yeah, things are okay at the moment.
Where are you? At home?
I've just got in. Yeah, I'm at home. I'm at home in West London at the moment. Yeah.
Lovely stuff. Lovely stuff. Well, before we chat records, just want to kind of
Yeah.
ask you how you found the last sort of 18 months now, really, and I guess more the kind of lockdown and how you found it personally and how it affected you creatively.
Well, it affected me creatively in that we were halfway through shooting a show called Vigil that we then had to put on hiatus for what we initially thought would be a couple of weeks, and of course it turned out to be 5 months. So that was both frustrating but also comforting, knowing that if and when we were coming back, I had work to go back to. I wasn't sort of in such a precarious position as I know a lot of my other contemporaries being self-employed were. We didn't have the, luxury of being furloughed and so on. So, yeah, it was a conflicting time because the weather was so nice as well. Do you remember? It was kind of lovely. And it was only really in hindsight that I thought the silver lining to all of this was the amount of time I was afforded with my son, who's just turned 5. There's never going to be another time like that. Well, I hope not, where you're afforded that much sort of quality time together, which I sort of grew to appreciate as the time went on. Initially, it was just all frustrating, and I suppose it exposed all your bad habits or your demons. They all come out and face you far more clearly because you've got none of the usual distractions. Absolutely. I think for a lot of people, a difficult thing to do in their life is to say no about work or certain things in their life. And when a government imposes a lockdown and says, no, you can't go to work, you all have to stay at home, it inevitably brings up those kind of issues that you either choose to deal with or not. So I think it was, for lots of people, it was a very different and strange experience, some for the better and some maybe for not, less good for some people. I didn't enjoy it ultimately. I like to be busy and active, and I'm quite a social creature. I do come back and recluse and sort of re-energize. I do need that as well, but I didn't need 5 months of it.
Yeah, it's nice to do it on your own terms and not be kind of told that, yeah, you've got to do that for however many months. Yeah, I'll totally relate to that. Well, look, let's start with the songs. And
yeah.
For track 1, I'm going to ask you, please, to tell me the song that you regard as having the greatest ever intro, please.
I mean, your questions are all brilliant, but of course they're sort of almost impossible to answer because you've got, 20 songs for each question.
You can have some honourable mentions. You can throw a few kind of some almost made it in if you want.
Well, the one I've chosen is "Let's Go Crazy" by Prince, just because it is genuinely a brilliant introduction. There's this sort of little sermon and electric guitar and keyboards going, and then it sort of erupts into this brilliant song. And it's sort of, I suppose, as with all choices and music, it's evocative of a particular time in one's life. And I think this reminds me very much of sixth form, school, and sort of being introduced to girls and alcohol and things like that. And it has those very sort of keen associations. But I do think genuinely it's a great intro to a song.
Yeah, it's an absolute masterpiece. And it's so weird that whenever I ask this question, so many people choose long intros.
Right.
And we live in a time now where pop music's so short and to the point, no sort of fat on the bone whatsoever. And I do love that when you look back, because you think now that if an artist wrote "Let's Go Crazy" and took it to a record company now and went, right, so it's going to start like this, and they'd be like, I don't think so. Like, just drop straight in when the synthesizers kick in and it all goes. It's like, you don't get that kind of beautiful long intro anymore. And it's so weird. Like, I reckon I've done maybe 350 of these podcasts, Adam, and I reckon at least 300 have all been long kind of.
How interesting.
Like, how it's kind of lulls you into this kind of false sense of security and then bang, gives you the payoff, like when the song drops. And I've had a few people that have gone, oh yeah, Beatles help. and like I've just gone straight in. But most people have these, you know, just instantly lean towards. I don't know if it's we're the same age. So I don't know if it's because of our generation. We was exposed to more music like that, where, you know, pop music wasn't quite as short and sharp. There was, you know, places you could go with it. But yeah, it's a cracking record. Was you a huge Prince fan?
I was actually, yeah, and I had the privilege of seeing him play at the O2 whenever that was. God, I don't know how long ago, and managed to get in, wangled my way into one of those little private after sessions.
No way.
Did, yeah. It was kind of the most extraordinary experience, that there was so much energy and talent. The talent that that man possessed was sort of incomprehensible, but in such a tiny frame as well. Yeah, no, I thought, I loved a lot of his music. But I'd be interested to know, Stu, if there is a particular track that has resurfaced in that question, particularly through all your guests, because presumably you interview all manner of people, from musicians to actors to,
yeah.
Has there been one that has popped up more than most for that particular one with the best intro?
You will be the third person to choose Let's Go Crazy.
Really?
Yeah. I think a lot of people, quite a few people have gone for Voodoo Child by Hendrix.
All right.
What was other really popular ones? Just trying to think of some of the ones that have been used a lot.
Yeah, I'd be very interested.
Yeah, again, it's just different ages of the guests. Obviously, yes, different kind of sort of reference points, and but then again, you know, I guess Prince is just going to transcend, you know, demographics, because he's Prince. Like, yeah. Whole Lot of Love chose a lot by Led Zeppelin.
Oh, interesting.
Just kind of big riffs, you know. That
yeah.
Off Bohemian Rhapsody.
I was going to say Bohemian Rhapsody. I was wondering if that was in there. That's such an iconic piece of music.
But again, all of these, like, you know, Bohemian Rhapsody. If you took that to a record label now, and I've got this new song. Well, hang on a minute. There's like 3 songs in one here.
Why would they be so against such long intros? Is there just it's a brevity? They need a sort of timings for a certain album or a certain amount of songs within an album, or
I think it's just the attention span of younger people. I watch my kids are 18 and 16, and I watch them, and they ingest all of their music and TV and stuff all through their telephone pretty much. And it's like thumbs are just rapid, and it's like everything's moving so quick. You know, not got time for YouTube. They'll watch it on TikTok. It's quicker and more, and it's like, and it worries me that art's getting lost there in that kind of just, it's got to be quick and just get that hit. And I mean, I guess pop music has always been there. If you go back to Motown, it's always been them sort of, you know, 2.5 minute, 3 minute perfect pop songs, you know, hit you with a chorus and just super hooky and sweet. But I do worry that you're not going to get a Bohemian Rhapsody or a Bowie or something that's got, you know, more not depth, but like more space to breathe and you know.
It's interesting, you're right, because it's such a sort of immediate access and sort of quick hit culture, particularly with the younger generation. And yet there are artists, I mean, I know he's not quite a contemporary, I guess he must be about 10 years younger, but people like Childish Gambino. And I remember that video, when that song and that video, This Is America, first came out, I thought, ooh, this feels like a slightly tectonic shift. This feels like both sort of a hark back to, you know, songs with profound and striking imagery and message, but also the length of it felt, I mean, I don't know, maybe it is actually
that's a great example
pop song, but it's a really that I thought was a terrific, I remember that it felt pretty seismic at the time, and more so than, who was the other artist? Was it Beyonce who did that one that was also about race and police, and the video was sort of very, but I remember the Childish Gambino one being so evocative, and mainly because I think it was meant to be all one shot, wasn't it? It was sort of through that warehouse and all these different, it was extraordinary. So yeah, I think it's a shame. I think there's a danger of always underestimating your audience. And I think if you give them something that is just good, artistically sound and new and inventive, people's attention spans will grow, I think. You know,
couldn't agree more.
Talent is eternal, my friend. So, you know.
Absolutely. I'm going to take you back, mate, to for track 2, to the first song you remember hearing that had an emotional impact on you, please.
Right. Well, I put two down because they're for two very different reasons. My mother, when I was about, God, let me think, I must have been about 4 or 5 or 6, was dating this very flamboyant entrepreneur called Alan. And he used to drive around in a sort of almost an electric blue Rolls Royce. And he always had Neil Diamond on, but loud, full volume. And the quality of Neil's voice and that impact of it, or the introduction to it at that age, which is kind of a formative time, 6, 7. I don't know why, whenever I hear his voice, it just takes me straight back to late 70s, that car, this sort of very flamboyant and gorgeous, generous man. And there's something that is so symbiotic with the warmth of Neil's voice, the raspiness and greatness of his voice that sort of coincided with the generosity and warmth of this man. So I find it always very evocative whenever Neil Diamond comes on, but particularly September Morn, which is the one that I chose. And then the other one, which is a more, I suppose, obvious correlation or connection to, is Seal's track Violet, which is also actually a very, very long song. But it sort of coincided with my first ever love, perhaps. I met this very beautiful Italian girl while I was traveling around in Switzerland, of all places. But I used to drive from Bath. I lived in Bath at the time, and I used to drive my crappy old Ford Escort from all the way from Bath down to Lausanne in Switzerland, just beyond Geneva. And his album had just come out. Seal's album had just come out. And I don't know, it was that then became the soundtrack to my first love. I thought I was in some sort of indie European movie, sort of driving through this amazing, you know, kind of landscape of Switzerland and France. And
the picture in your head wasn't a Ford Escort, though, was it?
It wasn't quite a Ford Escort, but the soundtrack was very, very vivid. And yeah, it always reminds me very, very strongly of that. You know, that time when you first fall in love and you think, oh God, this is everything, and everything's beautiful and everything's wonderful, and there's no tarnishing to anything. And it's also a very, very beautiful song that he wrote. I wanted to have the opportunity to ask him what it's actually about, because there's so many different themes in it. But it also has quite a long intro. But I never ever tire of listening to it as well, which I always think is a good sign for a piece of music.
And just to go back to the Neil Diamond track, if you had to sort of pinpoint the emotion, what would it have been?
With Neil Diamond, the emotion would have been, I think it's a weird one. It's an overwhelming sense of joy and richness, but tinged with sadness or regret. And I don't know if that's what the song is, or that's the quality of his voice, or that was the environment I was living in at the time. But yeah, it feels very full of life and rich, but sad is what I associate it with.
So was there always music on at home growing up?
Yeah, I guess there was. Yeah, certainly in those formative years when Alan was around, 3, 4, 5, there was a lot of music. That I think that Guilty album with Barbra Streisand, the Bee Gees had just come out, and Saturday Night Fever, and so that kind of music was playing loud. He used to play music loud. He liked it loud. So yeah, I remember that, and I remember Lovely Day, Bill Withers' Lovely Day. We used to play in Ibiza, and I always used to think Lovely Day, the refrain that goes Lovely Day, lovely, was Germany. So I always used to sing Germany instead. Germany, Germany, Germany. Yeah. So yes, there was, and then of course I got sent away to boarding school at quite a young age, and then music becomes a very different thing. I think, yeah, it becomes more consoling or restorative somehow.
Okay, well, let's talk school then, because for track 3, I'm going to ask you to tell me a song, please, that reminds you of your time at school.
Well, I've put down rather, unspecifically, I wrote down pretty much anything from Now That's What I Call Music, Volume 1 to Volume 3. And I looked them up actually yesterday, particularly Volume 3, I think, was the one that reminds me of when I got sent off to prep school. So there's not a particular track I could highlight, but it would be Nick Kershaw and Duran Duran, the Reflex, and UB40, Red Red Wine, and that whole generation of music, which I guess must have been early 80s, 80.
I think
83 maybe.
Now that's what I call music. It was the first record I ever bought, and it's
was it really?
And it's it was developed my obsession with music and facts around music, because I would open up the gatefold sleeve of the vinyl and see the little pictures of all the bands and stuff on there, and read all the information on the chart placings. And now one has got Red Red Wine on it. There's, I think Duran Duran's on one with Please Please Tell Me Now. I think Reflex is on 3.
Yeah.
But the first one came out in 83 anyway.
So, was it 83? Yes, that makes sense. So those were definitely the bands and the soundtracks that we that informed that total period of my life. And actually, we were allowed to watch Top of the Pops as well. I remember in the main hall at school, Top of the Pops was allowed to be on, and so I remember vividly listening and watching Men at Work, and getting very confused by Boy George as well. That was such an interesting image for a young 7 or 8 year old. Like, what's going on there? That's a guy, but he looks like a woman, but the music's great. What? I don't understand what's going on. And also, weirdly, at my school, we had a young boy, he's a contemporary of mine actually, called Damien Anderson, whose father was John Anderson from the band Yes. Right. And at that time, one of their songs was in the charts. And I mean, maybe it was at 13 or 12 or 15 or something. I think it was Owner of a Lonely Heart. Yeah. And boys being boys and such shit, we used to tease and go, oh, it's only 12 or 13, you know. But actually, it was, you know, it was top 20. Yeah. And it's a really good track. That whole album, I think it's called 90124 or something. It's a brilliant album. But, you know, what did we know then? We were just little shits bullying each other. But, yeah, so I remember that. I remember watching Top of the Pops, and I remember having the cassette. I had the albums at home, but the cassettes at boarding school, because we could listen to them on our Walkmans or our little beatboxes that were allowed in our studies. But yeah, now that's what I call music 3. Certainly was definitely the soundtrack to those years.
It's so crazy when you look at them performances, and certainly like that first time that Boy George was on Top of the Pops, like. Obviously we've come on so much as a society since then, but I remember the like furore of being like front page on all the newspapers the next day, like, is it a boy or a girl? And it was like, this is crazy. It's like, but it was a talking point in our playground. It was like, did you see Top of the Pops last night? And you just wonder, like, is that kind of sort of movements in music and you know, being able to sort of shock, because when you look back and watch the Sex Pistols on the famous Bill Grundy interview, where I think he just says like, you fucker or something like that, and it was like furore, like, this is the most horrific thing ever. Who are these? You know, get them out of the country. It's like, it's not that bad, and like, and you do think like, you wonder if will that exist anymore? You know, as where do you see? You know, is there another Sex Pistols around the corner? Is there another Boy George? Is there another Bowie? You know, these kind of, you know, strange characters that just, you know.
Yes. What will it take to shock us nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I think that's where I was going. Yeah.
A good and a sad thing, isn't it? That actually we're sort of unshockable. And weirdly, things like Spitting Image don't have nearly the same potency anymore, because what they're lampooning, they can't be more satirical. I mean, the reality is too weird. You know, Boris Johnson and Donald Trump. Boris Johnson losing his speech, or couldn't work out what his speech was at the CBI recently, and then banging on about Peppa Pig World. I mean, if you did that as a sketch for Spitting Image, you go, no, because the reality is too weird. It's all got so crazy. Do you know what I mean? It's so weird. So I don't know. And, you know, also with this woke generation that we're living through, I don't know what will surprise us or shock us in those ways. Maybe something far more traditional, I don't know. I mean, clearly we're moving, I think, you know, incrementally in the right direction, definitely in terms of acceptance and all of that. But I went to Leeds recently. My daughter directed a play up at Leeds, and I was staying in a hotel, and I just had to, the TV was on in the background. And Trading Places was on, and it's around the same time, I think it's mid-80s that Trading Places came out. And the use of the N-word is so liberally used in that film. And then not only that, Dan Aykroyd blacks up. He blacks up as a Rastafarian with Eddie Murphy. And you're like, what is going on? And that's, you know, that was 80 whatever, 4, 5. So it's weird that we seem like we've come a long way and not a long way in relatively short periods of time. But yeah, can you imagine that today?
Well, just touching on school, how was it as an experience? Did you enjoy school?
Oh, when I got sent away to prep school, no, that was deeply traumatic. Certainly the first 2 terms, homesickness, and I was an only child essentially then as well. So
how old was you then when you went away?
I think I was 7 when I got sent away. So, you know, when I look at my son who's now 5, the idea of sending him away in 2 years to sort of a dingy little prep school down near Brighton. Actually, to be fair, the school was lovely, but it's still, you know, it's happened to a whole generation of young men, and I think it's deeply traumatic. I'm not sure it's a great thing to do. And there are friends of mine who sort of had it more weirdly. There was one guy who got sent away to boarding school, and from his dormitory window, he could look out and see his own bedroom with his house sort of literally across the road. So his parents sent him away to boarding school despite living. So, you know, it's a weird.
Oh God, that's horrible.
It's quite odd. And, you know, a lot of good can come from it, but I think a lot of damage gets done, directly and indirectly as well. So it was a mixed bag. The first 2 terms were miserable, and I was desperately homesick. And then you just learn to survive. So you sort of kill a part of yourself, unfortunately. I think the part that shows vulnerability or emotion or empathy has to just sort of get squashed, because there's no room for it in those places. And ultimately, I had a great time, and the structure and the routine and all of that I thrived on, and made some really, really good friends. But yeah, I'm not sure it's ideal.
Yeah,
not sure. Yeah.
Did you know what you wanted to be?
Well, I didn't. No, I wouldn't say definitively at prep school, but I do remember doing the school plays and getting a lot of attention and making people laugh. That was the first time I remember doing something. I sort of ad-libbed something. We were doing Captain Beaky, I think, or something like that. And I came on as Mr. Fox, or I can't remember. I did something that then got a spontaneous reaction. And I remember that vividly, thinking, oh shit, that feels good. I like that reaction. And oh, it's live, and oh, okay. So that certainly planted the seed of maybe performance and acting at the age of 7 or 8, I guess. But no, I don't think I had any definitive ideas what I wanted to do then, but certainly a seed was sown.
Was you confident?
Probably, yeah. I think I was. I don't know. Yeah, I think I probably was, but I was so doted on by my mother. I was sort of lauded a bit. And actually during that time with the boyfriend, the Neil Diamond fanatic, Alan, he was incredibly wealthy. And so I sort of got anything I wanted. So I did, there was a dangerous period where I was sort of terribly spoiled, I think, and probably a bit obnoxious. But yes, I think, I always carried a certain confidence with me, I think, that I'm not sure how it's doing today. You know, life that has a habit of beating the hell out of you. But yeah, as a young child, I think I was pretty front-footed.
First song you bought from a record shop, please, mate.
Well, I think it may have been, I've written down, I couldn't remember specifically, but I have visions of probably going to Woolworths or maybe WH Smith's and buying the singles, or even Our Price maybe. And it was probably either Men at Work, Down Under, or Culture Club, Karma Chameleon. Those funny little 7 inches in a sleeve. And I remember in Woolworths, they used to stack the top 10 up, and you could choose, and then latterly they would do 12 inches as well. So I think it was a pretty close run thing between those singles, and possibly, and to my shame, admitting this, you don't remember a band called the Barron Knights, do you? Who used to do satirical takes on popular pop songs.
I live in Essex, Adam, and there's a venue called the Circus Tavern, and they were residents there, mate.
Seriously?
Chicken in a basket and the Barron Knights. Oh.
Yeah, I love them. I that was my first, I suppose, my first introduction to satire, I guess, or, you know, piss take on that way. And yeah, to my shame, I think I used to perform them. I used to learn them by rote and then put them in the tape deck. And then my mother would have dinner parties and I'd come down and put the tape on and sort of mime to them and do all these actions. I mean, can you imagine how hideous poor guests were going, oh, your son's so charming. Yeah. But yeah, so it was a combination of the Barron Nights and probably Culture Club in my first purchases.
Well, I spoke about confidence and, and from them early performances at dinner parties and school plays, you've obviously, gone forward and carved out an impressive career in, a famously difficult industry to have a long career in. So confidence aside, Adam, would you say you're driven?
Yeah, I think that might be one of the virtues of being an only child. I don't know. The few other only children I know around me do have a very distinct sense of purpose and drive. And I don't know what that is, because you would think with siblings, maybe you become more competitive. I don't know. But yeah, I've always been pretty single-minded, naively so or otherwise. And I don't know whether this was the type of attention I got from my mother or that and a combination of prep school, but for want of a better word, probably a terrible sense of entitlement. There was always a sense that I should be afforded the things I wanted to do. And I don't know if that's just checking my white privilege now or whether that was the environment in which I grew up. I think it was probably a combination of both. But yeah, there was definitely a sense of whatever I want to do, I will be able to do and achieve. And actually, the first time I was sort of really rudely awakened was shortly after leaving drama school, I suppose, or at drama school, where you suddenly weren't getting the parts you wanted, or you had to audition, or I wasn't represented by the agents that I thought I should be, or that was the first time when things weren't quite going to plan. And as a control freak, that was a really rude awakening. But
how did you deal with that?
Not well. Not well. I think I became even more ambitious and pushy, and the British sensibility doesn't take kindly to that, particularly in our industry. Actually, it's all got to be a bit humble pie and slightly doff your cap, and yeah, you may have 3 Oscars, but actually, am I any good really? There's all kind of that. And I think had I gone straight to America with the same attitude, it would have been embraced in a different way. It would have been seen as that sort of American go-getting spirit. And yeah, I do remember going early and during the pilot seasons, way back when, in the sort of when did I leave drama school? 95, so mid 90s. So before self-taping, stuff like that, and you go to LA and you'd sit out there for 3 or 4 months and do all these auditions. And I remember vividly adopting this sort of British sensibility, and they go, oh, well, so you've done a bit of TV and film and theatre, and you go, oh yeah, well, it was okay. And they sort of look at you weirdly going, right, so that's not good what you've done. You really needed to be going, celebrating yourself, going, yeah, no, I can do this, and I can do it really well, and I think I'd like to do this and this and this. And it's a very distinct difference in temperament and sensibility. But I suffered for it in the UK. My pushiness did not do me any favors early doors. And I think I got branded as being a bit too pushy and arrogant and difficult. So yeah, I came a bit of a cropper, I think, early doors as a result.
Okay, so leaving drama school, you start to go out and about. Track 5, the song that soundtracked your year's clubbing, please.
There's so many, Stu. I didn't even know where to start.
You can rattle a few off, mate.
Well, there were things like Give It Up with the Good Men and oh God, what was it? CNC Factory. What was that? That was such a massive hit.
Gonna Make You Work, or
Gonna Make You Sweat, or whatever. Yeah, all of that kind of stuff. But the track that I put down is Quadrophonia. Even now, when I listen to it today, it really gets me going. It's such a great dance track. And I was sort of at my early experience of nightclubs and stuff were places like Crazy Larry's, I'm afraid, just off the New King's Road. And then all these terrible sort of posh old balls that we do. There was a thing called set up by 2 poshos. What were they called? Gatecrasher balls. There was a whole thing called the Gatecrasher balls. And it was all this kind of music. It was less around it. Salt and Pepper was sort of coming out, and but in terms of dance, it was for me, Quadrophonia. There's a brilliant track called the Magic Roundabout, I can't remember who recorded it with the sort of loop of the children's show. And Yeke Yeke, do you remember that? Yeke,
of course,
Yeke,
yeah.
all those kind of dance tracks I absolutely loved and had all the 12 inches for. And then I pretended to DJ a bit. I mean, I did DJ at like friends' parties and things like that. I had my decks and I would schlep them around to friends and and so I became sort of within my little circle, a sort of resident DJ, and I'd go and play all these bits of dance, combination of these dance tracks and whatever was in, the top 10, 20 at the time. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I loved being able to influence and move a dance floor. It was so great.
Do you think, like, is that enough? Did you never sort of feel that kind of urge to then maybe push that a bit more and kind of, pop your head up in a nightclub? Or did you?
I kind of wish I did once when I was living in Switzerland. We befriended the guy of the local nightclub in Lausanne, and I played a trial set for him, and he really liked it. I mean, I really wasn't great. I wasn't doing brilliant mixing. I was literally putting one 12-inch on after another and mixing them quite nicely, but no great skills. But that was enough for him, and I did a couple of nights there, and we got I was at like this international school trying to learn French at the time with loads of really rich sort of kids from the Middle East and Greece, and do you know what I mean? And so they contacted all their friends, and we sort of made a big success of it. It became like a thing on a Thursday night that I did maybe for a couple of months while I was there in Switzerland, and loved it. Really, really enjoyed it. And of course, this was way before, the superstar DJs that we see and hear about now. This must have been 10, 15 years before any of that started rocking up. So there is a romantic, nostalgic part of me that thought, God, it would have been nice to pursue that, because you can see what those guys, their lives now, and what they get paid and where they get to go. And also weirdly, my family have a history with the island of Ibiza since like the mid 40s. Like my grandfather sailed there before there was even an airport, like 46. Just after the Second World War, and he bought quite a large plot of land. And over the years, this little finca sort of grew into this sort of sprawling estate that we used to go and visit every Easter and summer. And so we watched the growth of the whole clubbing life and industry out there throughout my young years into my teens and 20s. And to now, I mean, it's like insane compared to what it used to be. And weirdly, even more weirdly, this is quite a nice connection. My mother DJ'd, and when I say DJ, it was literally put on a record. It finishes, you put on another record. But maybe mid 60s in San Antonio, in Ibiza, and there was one nightclub there at the time. It was called the Playboy nightclub. And she's got photographs of that whole period, and it's absolutely amazing. There's one tarmac road that used to link San Antonio to Ibiza, and everything else was dust tracks. And she remembers these people getting together and buying an old farm in the middle of nowhere, and they were setting up a new club, and it was called Pasha. And Pasha has not moved. The original building has not moved from when they first set it up, and that used to be in the middle of nowhere, and now it's right by Ibiza Harbour. And that's kind of crazy to think that she was there right at the genesis, the inception of all those things. But they all thought, well, you're crazy, it's in the middle of the countryside, nobody's going to be able to find it. What a weird thing to do. Why would you buy an old farm and set up a nightclub there? And
wow,
how many years later, but there it is. Isn't that crazy?
So you could still go back and visit that intermittently and just seeing the kind of birth of Ibiza, Ibiza that we know.
Yeah, I remember when Coup was a big thing. It was called the Coup Club, which I think now is maybe Privilege, or that became certainly the biggest club on the island, and maybe it's still arguably one of the biggest clubs in Europe. I mean, it was thousands and thousands of people. So yeah, we sort of used to dip in and out of that intermittently and watch it evolve with both sort of awe and I guess a bit of sadness, because it felt like our island, even though it's not our island, but it had such a long history, that was beginning to get overrun and overpopulated. And San Antonio evolved from a sleepy little fishing village into this hellhole where the Brits used to go and, well, still do, and cause all manner of chaos. But
absolutely.
yeah, it's still a very magical island. If you know where to go and know what to avoid, you can it's still very, very special, but we don't have nearly the same connection to it as we once did, unfortunately.
Well, from Ibiza, I'm going to take you home.
Yeah.
And for track 6, I'm going to ask you to tell me a favourite song from an artist from your home county, please.
I've always loved this artist. I used to listen to her a lot when she first brought out this album with my daughter. When I'd have my daughter at weekends, we used to drive to stay with friends in Somerset, and we'd always compile like a compilation CD. And Kate Nash was often on it because this song, Foundations, that I've chosen, had just come out. And lyrically, and her cheek, and her skill on the piano, and the rawness of it, I always found very appealing. And then I had the privilege of seeing her play live at Jules Holland's Hootenanny. My dear friend David Tennant was Doctor Who, and so got invited and could bring guests, and we got to go along and record Hootenanny, which of course they do in November. Sorry to dispel anybody's fears and illusions. But she was one of the guests, and along with the Kaiser Chiefs, I think, with their C6 Steve, Kylie was there, Paul McCartney. I mean, it was a mega lineup. I think Duffy was there as well. And you know how evocative it is when you see musicians live. Those moments sort of stay with you in a far more profound way. So the fact that her album had just come out and I'd been listening to it with my daughter, and then we had this amazing evening with her live, it's always sort of stayed with me. And I find it curious that she's having a big success as an actor as well over in the States with that
wrestling show.
And the wrestling show, yeah. And whenever I've seen her in interviews or talk shows, she seems like she's sort of out there, which I really enjoy, and it appeals to me. She seems pretty bold, but yeah, that's why I plumbed for Kate Nash. It's not an easy choice, Stu, you know.
Yeah.
They're so, you know, I don't even know how you begin to narrow it down, but I think you've just got to go with things that you continue to like listening to, you know.
Yeah. Kate Nash is a true artist, and it's really weird. I run a nightclub, and I DJ occasionally nowadays, and
right.
And obviously after lockdown, it's like kind of a sort of an indie club, and bizarrely Culture Club played their first ever gig in my to go full circle. But obviously after lockdown, there's nearly 2 years and sort of 2 generations of kids that have never been clubbing, and so it's been really nice being sort of to start for them to come to my club and for me to sort of play records to them, and I played Foundations for the first time in ages. I heard it on something. I stuck it on. I was like, that's such a good pop song. And I put it on, and what's Foundations? Maybe 13 years old now, maybe.
Is it really?
Worrying, yeah.
Right.
But it is weird how some songs just get into sort of woven into society, and there's all these kind of 18-year-old kids dancing, and they know every single word, and you just think it's brilliant when you see these kind of these songs that are so hooky and catchy. And there's a brilliant documentary just before she got the job. It's Glow, isn't it? The TV show.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. That's absolutely right.
And just before that she made a documentary about literally sort of, because I think she sort of chose to do what she wanted to do and maybe not do what I imagine the record company was sort of saying, now you need to do this because you're a pop star. You know, she went to, you know, she wanted to be an artist, and it's a fantastic documentary where she's literally sort of selling bits of like her own merchandise and memorabilia to kind of fund, you know, just to stay somewhere in America where she can then record this. And it's just, you just realize that she's just put it all on the line to make her next record, and it you know, it was just wonderful to see. And then obviously I think as the documentary finishes, she just gets the audition for this show, and then then that becomes obviously a huge success, and I'm sure that you know, helps sort of bankroll and finance, you know, future recordings. But yeah, I think she's wonderful, Kate Nash. That's a great choice, mate.
I hope she does continue to record as well. I mean, I'm not aware of any new albums recently. She brought anything out recently?
She still releases records. Yeah, quite regular.
Good.
Right, so you get to you get to get on the turntables again now and play Tastemaker DJ. So
yes,
for the last track, a song that you think many people may not know that you would like them to hear, please.
This is a great question. It's a really, really great question. And I would love to go back through all your other podcasts and hear particularly this answer, because what a brilliant thing to be introduced to stuff that you might not know. So unfortunately, I think mine may well be known, but I've chosen two, and they're both from composers who create music for film and TV and soundtracks. And there's one that maybe more people might know about now because of a success of a show called The White Lotus. But the composer is called Cristobal Tapia de Vere. And I first got turned on to them because they composed the music to a terrific show called Utopia that was on Channel 4 a couple of years ago over here. And the depth and richness of their music and uniqueness of it, I found so compelling and arresting to listen to, but particularly this track called Utopia, which has excerpts from Paul Reddy and Neil Maskell, who are actors in the show, excerpts from the actual interwoven with the soundtrack. And I find it really great. And there's something lovely about listening to specifically music made for film and television to listen to in your headphones when you are traveling or in a museum. The other track I've chosen is the soundtrack from the Three Colors trilogy. It's called the Trois Couleurs, and it was red, blue, and white. And they were amazing films with Irene Jacob and Juliette Binoche. And the composer, whose name actually I probably can't pronounce. Do you know how to pronounce it? He's called.
I'll let you have a go at it, and I'll save my own embarrassment.
Zbigniew Priesnia. And I'm not even sure what nationality he is. Maybe that's Czech or I don't know. But that music is also, it's predominantly classical, but it's absolutely stunning. And I remember walking around the V&A listening to this sort of orchestral and then often quiet pieces. He does some beautiful pieces with a flute and with an organ. And it's so evocative. You suddenly think you're walking around your own movie. I love that. I love music that is instrumental effectively, but is still very, very evocative, and you sort of create your own dramas or stories with it. But those are two of my favorite sort of composers for that type of music, and I urge everybody to listen to them. And if you've not seen The White Lotus, which is currently on, I think it's on Sky Atlantic, it is a genius show, and this composer Cristobal Tapia de Vere does the music for it, and it's almost another character within the drama. That's how evocative and intrusive, some might argue, the music is. But it's great. It's really, really good. It's so quirky. So I'd urge people to check both of those people out.
Wonderful. Well, we make it nice and easy for people to do that, Adam, because we put a Spotify playlist together to accompany the podcast, so people can go and listen to all of the records that we've spoken about. So so it's nice and easy for people to do that. As we sort of find ourselves coming to the end of a year, and hopefully it'll be a far more connected and happier Christmas than the last one. As we sort of then looking into the new year, like what are you looking forward to from the coming months personally, and what's coming up professionally?
Personally, I'm looking for, if I'm really honest, I've been very lucky this year. I've been very, very busy. So actually a little bit of downtime, not too much, just a little bit of proper downtime with my family and friends, which we're planning on doing over Christmas and the New Year. I'm really, really looking forward to properly downing tools and seeing friends that I've not managed to see and sort of connect again. It's been such a weird, disparate, and in many ways a divisive year, and I'd love to try and rectify all of that, or certainly not have that feeling abound. And then professionally, I'm just about to finish filming. I've got about 2 more weeks on this new thriller called The Suspect for ITV, and it's being made by the same team who did Vigil. So we're hoping it will have maybe the same sort of reach and success that Vigil did. But I don't think that'll be out till possibly next autumn. I have a new period drama coming out called Hotel Portofino that I'm actually going to be able to go and see the screening. I think they're screening the first 2 episodes tomorrow night at the Electric Cinema. So it'll be very interesting to see how that's all come together. We shot that over the summer in Croatia, which was a lovely sort of busman's holiday. And I've no doubt it'll be very, very beautiful. It's set in the mid-20s on the Italian Riviera in Portofino. It's sort of like, how best to describe it? It's a bit like the Durrells meets Downton Abbey. It's sort of
nice
period Brits abroad, and a bit of upstairs, downstairs action. And there's sort of, you know, trials and tribulations, love and loss, and, you know, the rise of fascism in Italy plays quite a prominent part in it as well, and the trauma of the First World War. And so it's kind of got everything, but I'll be interested to see how it's all been stitched together. And then I'm hoping maybe the next spring to be working with the comedian Greg Davis. We shot a pilot together, crumbs, end of 20. And then everything got put on hiatus and pushed because of COVID and so on. So we're hoping we can get together, everybody's schedule can get together to complete, well, shoot. Sky commissioned it for 2 series. So it would be great to be able to shoot that together in the spring. He's genuinely one of the funniest and nicest men. You know, when you see people from a distance, a bit like Don't Meet Your Heroes, but he so didn't fail to disappoint. Such a generous, funny, cheeky, wicked soul. And he's about 27 feet tall. I've never met such an enormous man, but enormous in every way. He's a great, great human being. So yeah, I'm hoping we get to shoot that first series sometime next spring.
Wonderful. Adam, it's been a real delight talking records with you, mate. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Stu. Thanks for reaching out. This has been a real pleasure. And it's such a great thing to be able to delve into the past and have all those things evoke all those memories again. So thank you for affording me the opportunity to do it.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, mate.
All right, buddy.
Just gonna press